report was pretty provocative, and it had general support from folks like Joel, who's probably the premier education reform leader, one of them as former chancellor of the New York City schools, and Randy Weingarten, who was his arch nemesis for many years when they were negotiating the collective bargaining agreements. So I think it's actually a good sign that you can have a bigger, broader, bolder conversation about education reform and all the things that could come if you moved in that direction, because there's, unlike most places in policy these days where it's like a gigantic food fight, and even when people agree, they can't figure out how to, I don't know, that's my view about Washington these days, is even when they agree, they refuse to admit it. You know, it's like, can we just find one place where, you know, we don't have to fight? There's enough good things to fight about that are based on principle and, you know, ideology. This is a place where there seems to be a convergence, and so I'm glad you mentioned that report, because that's yet another evidence of that. As it relates to how we internationalize our country and prepare ourselves for an incredibly competitive world that already exists. It's not like, oh, I see the future. This is, you know, this is yesterday's news, as you said. I think there are a few things that we could do that now we can do today that we couldn't have maybe a decade ago. One is back to the Florida accountability system that other states now are embracing. Include these things that we want more of into the accountability system. So, you know, our first accountability system, the ABCDF system, 100% based on student learning, half on learning gains, half on proficiencies, was fairly basic because we didn't have a lot of other tools to do it. But today in Florida, the high school grades include the percentage of kids. You get a bonus point, or, you know, for every kid that takes an IB class. And you get extra points for kids that take AP courses. And you get extra points for kids that dual enroll. And the net result is, lo and behold, because we're measuring these things and we're providing incentives and, you know, therefore disincentives at least indirectly, we have a lot more IB students. We lead the nation by far in the number of students taking AP classes and passing them. In fact, 23% of Hispanic high school students take AP classes in Florida. Now, if you think, just for the record here, because maybe you haven't been to my beloved state recently, maybe there's a vision. Well, these are all, you know, rich people that come from Nicaragua and Venezuela and Cuba, whatever. No, this is a demographic that looks quite similar to other places in the country. And so if it can happen there, because everybody has to be organized around it because of our accountability system, you can see quickly, if you have higher expectations for every group, you're going to get a better result. And so we include it in our accountability system. And the final thing I'd say is, okay, so you want to have offerings in different languages. There's going to be shortages of teachers to do that in most places. Maybe not in Miami, maybe not the Dallas area, but you get beyond that, and quickly your teachers are as monolingual as your students. And so how do you achieve that? And that's where digital learning, just as it is a tool for higher education, it is a powerful tool for K-12 education as well, where it's not virtual learning in all likelihood. In fact, Florida has the largest virtual school by far, 330,000 courses administered. But it's probably, and AP classes for foreign language is one of their key programs. But it's probably going to look more like, over time, a hybrid format, or in the brick and mortar schools where high quality content comes in, and the teacher is a partner in the learning experience, but they don't have to know Mandarin or French. They may know Spanish, but they may not. They can offer a wider array of courses, which I think is, to your point, I think a lot of kids would be turned on if they were given that opportunity, but how do you give it to them if you don't have enough teachers that are trained to be able to do it? And this is a solution to both the opportunity that you described and I think the challenge if we wanted to make it a strategy.
Oh, but in this case, we're talking about kids who are already bilingual, and then they come to our schools, and the schools do not promote the maintenance of that language. People think that if you have to be a monolingual English speaker to be a good American, I present the view, you don't have to.
Oye, en Miami ese no es un problema. I don't know about Dallas, man, but I frankly think that, you know, that to learn to be, you know, speak Spanish. My children learn Spanish, so it's a similar kind of experience. My children learned Spanish when their first language was Spanish. We moved from Venezuela back to Houston, and it was really hard because the socialization process kind of pushed them away from Spanish for literally 15 years. They went back to it, and they're relatively bilingual now because their mama made them do it. And I think once people they have to learn English, obviously, to be successful, and everybody aspires to that. In most places, I mean, you shouldn't institutionalize monolingual activity. You're completely right about that. And that's like saying we're going to compete in the world, but we're going to be like the Monty Python guy on the trunk, you know, with a torso saying it's just a flesh wound, you know. I mean, you have to have all the tools capable. Maybe I'm biased because I live in a place that is completely the opposite, you know, where we learn English, but 60% of the people that live in the Miami-Dade area are born from outside the country, so we speak a lot of different languages, and in school as well.
It seems to me that if we have the intent